Yes, this is still New Zealand, and this is the third video in which I talk about our trip to the South Island. But if you've seen the previous two, I think you can see why. However, I still have a couple hundreds gigabytes on my drive waiting to be shared with you, and I hope one of you will find these video notes useful someday. After several trips around the South Island, we once again returned to Queenstown, which has been a kind of hub for our journey all the time. This trip was never about the cities, and from the beginning our plan was to see as many natural sights as possible. But to be honest, another purpose of this trip was to go snowboarding, because New Zealand is one of the best places for that in the Southern Hemisphere, and to be specific, it's Queenstown. So today I will definitely talk about the local slopes. But of course, you can't do without a trip to the incredible beauty of the city surrounding and a short walk around the city itself. But before we dive into all of these interesting places, be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, as it really helps to the channel's growth and new videos releases. And now, let's go! Before we dive into the fun, I would like to set the tone a bit and say that Leah has never snowboarded. In my case, it's a little bit better. I tried it several times, but the last time was about 5 years ago, and it was something like a 100-meter artificial slope. So we spent the first few days with an instructor. And don't be surprised to see us on the children's slopes without any cool tricks. I mean, no tricks at all. But you can look at these cool shots of professionals to see some real action, because our snowboarding will be more like this. Anyway, this is our first real ski trip, so we were super excited and everything felt new and interesting. This is about our level. The time will come and we will snowboard over there. Our plan was to practice for 1.5 days and then spend another 1.5 days on the slopes. Take a break and come back for 3 more full days of snowboarding. But something changed our plans, but more on that later. As in any ski resort, you can hire an instructor here, which is what we decided to do to get the right skiing technique. We chose a group class twice a day, as the cost of an individual one was quite pricey. This is what our beginner slope looks like, and to be honest, everything is not as complicated as it seemed. So I hope we will be snowboarding like a pro just in a few days. Another important thing for beginners is renting all the equipment. We decided to invest in snowboarding clothes, but we rented all the riding equipment. Of course, for the sake of simplicity, you can rent everything at a ski resort. But if you do it in Queenstown, it will cost you a few times cheaper. By the way, speaking of ski resorts on the South Island, the most famous of them are Cardrona, The Remarkables, Coronet Peak and Treble Cone. And 3 of them are in the Queenstown area. So for the first 2 days we decided to get our training on Cardrona and go for the full-scale ride there, after which we planned to try the Remarkables and Coronet Peak. Treble Cone is a long way from Queenstown, but if you're staying in Wanaka, which is just to the north, Treble Cone and Cardrona are just the best options. Meanwhile, we had a pretty quick first day of training, but we still had to enjoy the sunset on the way back home. What you definitely don't expect to see at the sunset lookout is a cow walking freely at some kind of frozen watering hole. It's not like I've never seen a cow, but the last time was a long time ago. And you never know if this New Zealand cow is about to perform that haka war dance and go fighting with you. But we seem to have no problem passing this sunset guard. The next day we returned to the same slope to continue our training. Today we arrived an hour and a half earlier than yesterday, but as you can see, the weather is completely different. Today we are in the clouds, so I'm putting my glasses back on. Today is our last class and we are waiting for an instructor now. After that we will go for a ride on one of the beginner slopes. The second day with an instructor usually includes only one morning lesson, after which you are free to try any of the slopes, which is what I actually decided to do. As I said before, don't expect any great shots with cool tricks like double flips, unless I did this not by my choice. The next day we immediately moved to our new ski resort. It was the Remarkables, and it's closer to Queenstown, which is certainly more convenient when you live in town. But due to the warmer weather, our riding experience was not so pleasant, as the snow was a bit stuck together and in some places it turned into ice. In addition, as a beginner, I found the green tracks, or the easiest tracks, a bit more difficult here due to some narrow sections. I even took a wrong turn on such a section once and hit a part of a blue slope, which turned into just a slow bump sliding experience. Since it was a completely new experience for Leah, and as I mentioned the snow wasn't the best, she stayed on the training slope, which by the way is twice as long here as on Cardrona. So her plan was to go snowboarding in the remaining 3 days after a short break, during which we wanted to visit a couple of beautiful places north of Queenstown. But we had to make a minor adjustment to this plan, and the next place to visit was the emergency room. Everything happened strangely and unexpectedly on the second day of snowboarding. There was one very special thing between falls and falls. Although it seems like nothing serious, it was quite difficult for me to get up after that. The thing is that I landed with my chest on my fist, which in turn hit the phone in the chest pocket of my jacket. It was such a severe pain that even then I realized that something was wrong. But since there were no bruises or swelling in the next half an hour and the pain was almost completely gone, I decided it was nothing major. After 2 hours in the waiting room, I was examined by a doctor who said that I need an X-ray, as it was very likely that my rib was broken. The X-ray didn't show any fracture, but the doctor told me that sometimes an X-ray simply might not show minor fractures. However, they look at X-rays not only to confirm fractures, but also to check whether the lung is damaged. In any case, I was told that it is not very safe to continue snowboarding, so our snowboarding plans ended here. Luckily, this situation ended well, and that only meant that we had some extra time to relax and explore the area. First of all, we decided to head north from Queenstown towards the small town of Glenorchy, which is a nice drive along Lake Wakatipu. That might sound strange, but this road reminded us Australia's Great Ocean Road. I can't say they are very similar, but it definitely had a similar vibe. it took us 2 attempts to get there, as the first time was right after the hospital and it was already quite late, so we spent all the time on Lake Vakatipu and didn't complete the planned route. Yes, this road is definitely very beautiful. We went down the road for something like a lookout or maybe a campsite. It's so beautiful sunset there. It looks so amazing. I just don't know. Wherever you go, everything is beautiful here. Really, everything is just amazing. We had a big question, why there are 2 remotes on the table if there is no TV and no projector anywhere around. By the way, there is a very big fish here. Turns out the trick is that there is a magic closet here. Nice? Yes, it's almost like Joey's. This is where the top of Coronet Peak must be somewhere. The very mountain we won't snowboard. The weather next day was a bit more cloudy, but of course it also has its own charm. Look at this cutie. Although the weather seemed very cloudy, as we approached Glenorchy, the clouds seemed to magically dissolve, bringing a nice weather. We reached one section of the road which for some reason has no clouds, and one of the peaks on the other side of the lake can be seen from here. We're going up there right now to check out the view from that lookout, but even from here it looks very nice. Very beautiful spot. When we were driving past this place last night, and it wasn't that beautiful without the clouds. Clouds add something special to this view. Like right now, when you can see mountain peaks and the sides are completely cloudy. It certainly looks magical. Glenorchy itself is quite small, and we hardly stayed there. But it's actually quite famous, as the Chronicles of Narnia was shot somewhere here. And of course, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. And it also has its own paradise not far away. I already mentioned this place in the first video about New Zealand, when we did a hike on the other side of the mountain. And now we've just got to this side. There is simply no way without a lamp here. If you watched the very first of this trip, you probably remember this piece when we hiked a small peak in the snowy mountains at the beginning of the Routeburn Track. So now we are on the other side of this track, which by the way is the official start. And here, as expected, the area is quite scenic. We got to the track. Of course, it's incredibly green, and it reminds us the track we did at the very beginning of our trip near Lake Tiano. But instead of a lake, there is a turquoise color mountain river with beautiful stones and a bridge across the river. As a result, we got off the main track a bit onto an already trodden path closer to the river overlooking the waterfall. Unfortunately, this waterfall is not visible from any other points on the main track. But I know who can help us with that. It's already starting to get dark slowly. We're going back to our path in the forest, but we need to find the way to get there first, because there is no track here. It's just an entrance to the forest, almost through the bushes, and here is just stones with no path. The plan is to get through the forest as soon as possible, because as soon as the sun goes down, it will be quite dark in the forest. But we do have a flashlight, maybe just one. Do I have a flashlight? So yeah, just one flashlight. But there is one at least, and another one on the phone, so we won't get lost. Without noticing how quick the day had almost ended, we began our return home in complete darkness. This time the weather had completely worsened, and we finally decided to devote our time to a short walk around the city, because we didn't really want to go anywhere far when it rained. Who is waiting for us here? Hey, alpaca! Well, rainy Queenstown has a slightly mountainous vibe with beautiful clouds above the lake, covering the mountain peaks that are usually visible directly from the city. You can also feel a spirit of adventure and something unusual here. It's just perfect weather for walking, so great that I'm already a little cold. I think we will be coming home soon. Speaking of the unusual when combined with the weather, what definitely could use rain is riding a short jet boat that looks more like a small submarine. But this is not all the entertainments you can try here in the city. That's not what we were about on this trip, so we decided to just take a walk around the city and be a little jealous of those who live in the houses with such beautiful views. We climbed up the mountain to see the city from above. Of course, we are very jealous of the people who live here. And there are houses here with so perfect view. And the view is good in any weather, regardless of whether it's super sunny or cloudy, the view is already closer to the afternoon, unexpectedly for us, and despite all weather forecasts, the rain changed to a slightly sunnier and more joyful atmosphere. And since we were already a little hungry, we decided to go to probably the most famous place in New Zealand, Fergburger restaurant. The fact that this is the most famous place is certainly my subjective opinion, but it's because I heard about it from so many people, including our Australian friends many times before our trip. And even our friends who flew to Christchurch and drove to Queenstown, people in Christchurch recommended this place, not to mention the queues here every single day. So we decided that maybe at least the rain would scare the people away. I can't say the place was empty, but I can say that it was pretty tasty, though not as much as it was in a small place nearby with the simple name Local Kitchen. Yes, it's quite good, but it's not that good to stand in the line here for half an hour. But returning to the entertainments in the city that we haven't tried, there are so-called jet boats. By the way, we didn't know about this, so we just stopped here passing this nice bridge and just went down closer to the river with the idea of flying a drone. But the company that manages jet boat rides and is based near the bridge clearly hinted that this is not allowed. As a result, the only entertainment of the day and almost the last day at Queenstown was to try to catch a southern lights 1.5 hours from the city, because the weather forecast said that if we climbed to the top of one of the mountains, we would be above all these clouds and we would have the most gorgeous view. But as always, no trust to forecasts. We ended up in a cloud, and as there was no one around, I asked for a bit of help. And so, to help myself with landing in the dark, I turned into some kind of lighthouse. I think, one sec, that's the Southern Lights. As there is no big cities in that direction, and it doesn't look like the light is coming from below the clouds. So this is what's above the clouds. And here are the stars. The quality is terrible, but I guess that's all the southern lights we will be able to see. So maybe another time. For now, all that's left is to go back to Queenstown, pack up, and explore a small mountain right within the city to see this view one last time before returning home. almost a couple of hours before our departure, something that we didn't expect happened. Long story short, our airline has decided to cancel our flight. It wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for two things. The first is that in 2 days we had a trip to Uluru with our friends, so they would have to go without us and we'll lose our tickets there. And the second is that there are no other flights in the next 3 days. I remember walking and talking to the camera about the whole situation, while Leah tried to call the airline and find out what was going on. As the result, after 2.5 hours of calls and waiting in line at the airport where we decided to visit the airline representatives, the end result was not that bad. We were paid for accommodation for the next 3 days, and they even reimbursed part of our food expenses, as well as the cost of lost tickets to Uluru. So you can always find something positive, even when your plans start to fall apart. And then we realized that this meant only one thing, that our New Zealand journey was continuing. And this channel would see another video from this amazing trip, which will definitely remain a warm memory that will always be a pleasure to return to.